Right then, the ratings agency Moody's Investor Service has downgraded the state-owned power utility in South Africa, Eskom, from BA2 to BA1. Now, this follows the lowering of the country's credit rating as a whole last week. Now, Moody says that the outlook for the power company is negative. Given Eskom's fairly strong links with the South African government, it relies on it for a lot of funding, and its sensitivity to changes in the sovereign credit profile, the downgrade primarily reflects the one-notch drop in South Africa's sovereign credit rating to Baa3 negative. Right, then let's get a little more detail on exactly what's going on in South Africa. Sumitra Naidu joins us now live in Johannesburg with more data on this story. Sumitra, with this downgrade in place, how much more costly is it for Eskom to be able to service its unsecured debt?
Well, Rama, the latest downgrade certainly does not bode well for the utility, but it does look worse on the balance sheet. It's going to be extremely tough going forward. Interest payments on loans already stand at over 30 billion rand. Eskom has already started knocking on the regulator's door to ensure higher tariffs in order to service all of these debts, saying that it would have to lift revenue as it doesn't have that amount to cover its obligations right now and going into the next year. It still has money that can be drawn down from the government, but that's essentially why it was downgraded again. Moody's noted that there is strong government support for Eskom, but the economy's weakening position led to a sovereign credit downgrade, and this creates concerns about the government's position as a buffer to Eskom. So it's definitely going to be a lot tougher going forward.
Indeed, Eskom at this point has only gotten about half of the funding it needs for the next fiscal year, 2017-2018. So with this downgrade in place, how much harder is it to raise the rest of the debt funding it needs?
Well, we're clearly seeing a lack of confidence and increased concern. Eskom has been struggling to issue bonds in the market since last year already. These downgrades will make it a lot harder, well, if anyone bites, it will be at a premium. Eskom's debt costs have already risen significantly. It's going to spend a long time just servicing that debt. It can go to the government. It still has guarantees. Government agreed to 350 billion rand, but Eskom has already drawn 218 billion rand from that.
Indeed. Speaking of all the amount of support it gets from the government, these figures are staggering. It had a 60 billion rand debt to equity conversion in 2015, then another equity injection of about 23 billion rand, courtesy of South African taxpayers in March last year. How much more taxpayer support does Eskom require?
Well, as the situation lies now, it needs a whole lot more, and that's why Eskom has gone to NERSA, the energy regulator. It wants a tariff increase of 20% for next year. It's extremely high. It hasn't been approved as yet, but even if the regulator agrees to grant the utility half of that amount, it's still very high, more especially in the current weak economic environment. But that's another reason it's asking for so much. It's trying to make up for low demand. So even though Eskom is in a slightly better position in terms of supply, it is generating excess. Sales are dropping very fast. A business in particular can't afford the high tariffs anymore. So you know, overall, if you look at government, we seem to be moving down a very dangerous path in terms of debt. Government guarantees to all state-owned entities totals around 477 billion rand. Eskom has drawn 218 billion rand off that. That leaves about 170 billion. If the other SOEs draw on those guarantees, it will total around 10% of GDP, debt to GDP. So it's very concerning. Eskom, of course, wholly owned by the government, creates a bigger crisis for the government itself.
Indeed, we'll have to leave it there for the time being. It sounds like quite a crisis is brewing there. That's Sumitra Naidu, of course, live in Johannesburg.